My parents used to mock me for my appearance, and I finally decided to cut ties with them. I think I've always been the odd one in my family. Growing up, I remember my parents' endless comments about my body, my clothes, my hair, and even the way I walked. At first, I told myself it was just their way of showing concern, but deep down, I always knew something wasn't right. It all started when I was around 9 or 10. I remember coming home from school one day with a new outfit, excited to show it off. I thought I looked pretty cool for once. Now, something that wasn't too childish or boring, something that made me feel grown up. But the moment I stepped through the door, my dad started with the comments. "Why are you wearing that? You look like you're trying too hard." I could see my mom rolling her eyes from the kitchen. It wasn't even an insult. It was more like a dismissive comment that made me feel stupid for trying to look good. That was just the beginning. Over the years, it got worse. My mom would joke about how I couldn't fit into the same clothes my friends wore. My dad would compare me to my cousins who were always perfect. And no matter how much weight I lost or how much I tried to dress better, it never seemed enough. I started to believe them. I really did. I told myself, they're my parents. They must know what they're talking about. If my mom said I looked frumpy, maybe I did. If my dad said I was too fat, maybe I was. But as I got older, something changed. I started to push back, though it was subtle at first. When I'd come home from school, I started avoiding mirrors. Every time I looked into one, it felt like I was seeing the same person my parents saw, a person who wasn't good enough, wasn't pretty enough, wasn't thin enough. I started to make excuses to stay out of the house, spending extra hours at school, hanging out with friends, anything to avoid going back to the place that constantly reminded me I wasn't enough. By high school, it was unbearable. My mom's helpful suggestions turned into lectures. My dad would occasionally ask, "So, when are you going to take care of that weight problem?" Like it was some minor inconvenience that I could just fix overnight. Every family gathering became a nightmare. My aunts and uncles would all sit around the table, and my mom would tell them about how I was trying to lose weight but didn't have the discipline. It wasn't just teasing, it was humiliation, a public mockery of my self-worth. And in those moments, I felt smaller and smaller, like I was fading away in front of their eyes. I started to notice how other people treated me too. At school, I wasn't the pretty girl, and I was fine with that. But when I went home, it felt like everyone in my family treated me as if I wasn't worth anything. They were the ones who made me feel ugly. They made me feel like I didn't belong, like I wasn't good enough to even exist in the same space as them. It was always a little comment, a side eye, a whispered word in the kitchen. I could never escape it. The worst part? It was always masked as concern. My mom would say, "I'm just trying to help you, sweetie. You know I want the best for you, right?" But I knew. I knew deep down that it wasn't about help. It was about control. They controlled how I felt about myself. They controlled how I saw myself in the mirror. They had the power to make me feel worthless, and it worked. For a long time, I let it work. One day, I snapped. I was 19, sitting at the kitchen table when my mom casually mentioned, "You should be wearing something more flattering. You know, like your cousin Julie, she's always been able to keep her weight down, and she looks amazing in everything." And for the first time in my life, I didn't just smile and nod. I didn't let it slide. I looked at her and I said, "You think I don't know that? You think I don't hear it every single day? You think I don't get it? I'm not Julie, and I never will be. I'll never be enough for you, and you've made that clear my entire life. So if you're waiting for me to finally be your perfect little girl, I've got news for you. It's never happening." The silence that followed was deafening. My dad didn't even look up from his newspaper, and my mom stared at me like I was an alien. She didn't know how to respond to that. I was done. Done pretending it didn't hurt. Done pretending I could be the person they wanted me to be. And then something strange happened. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing again. But that wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning of me realizing that I needed to make a choice. It wasn't going to be easy, but I needed to either keep living in their world of constant criticism and self-loathing, or I needed to step out and find my own life. And so I made my choice. I chose myself. Cutting ties with my parents wasn't something I expected to do, not in a million years. But after that dinner table confrontation, I couldn't go back. It wasn't just that one moment, though. It was the culmination of years of being made to feel like I didn't belong, years of hearing nothing but criticisms about my body, my life choices, my very existence. I didn't realize it at the time, but they had been wearing me down, slowly but surely, until I no longer knew who I was without their constant input. I was constantly seeking their approval, hoping one day they'd look at me and say, "You've done well. You're good enough." But that day never came. And the more I waited, the worse it got. I didn't speak to my parents for a while after the confrontation. I kept to myself, and I felt a strange peace in the silence. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to them. But as the weeks passed, the guilt crept in. My mom in particular didn't take it well. I could hear her calling every few days, but I ignored her calls. She left messages, but they were always the same. "Why are you doing this to me? I'm just trying to help you. You know that, right? You'll regret this. This isn't the way to handle it." I didn't even bother to listen to the voicemails anymore. I wasn't ready to hear it. Then one day, out of nowhere, my mom showed up at my door. I wasn't prepared for this. I had been trying to get my life together, working at my job, saving up money for an apartment, figuring out who I was outside of their influence. But when I opened the door and saw her standing there, I froze. She looked different, disheveled, like she hadn't been sleeping. And then, like a switch flipped, the mask came off. "We need to talk," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. We sat down in my tiny living room, and I immediately felt the weight of what she was about to say. "I know you're angry with me," she began, "and I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was helping you, but I was wrong." I felt a twinge of hope. Was she actually apologizing? Was she finally seeing it from my perspective? For a second, I thought maybe things could change. Maybe she could see me for who I was instead of who she wanted me to be. But then she hit me with the line that sent me spiraling back into the past. "I just want you to be happy, but you need to lose weight. You need to try harder. You'll never be happy with yourself until you're in control of your body." My stomach twisted. I couldn't even look at her. It wasn't the apology I was hoping for. It was just another version of the same thing. She couldn't let go of the image of me she had in her head, the perfect daughter who fit the mold she'd created for me. I realized then that my mom wasn't interested in seeing me as I truly was. She was still trying to change me into something I wasn't, and that was the final straw. I stood up. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "I'm not going to keep living in your world of expectations. I'm done trying to meet standards that aren't even mine. I need space to be myself, and I don't think you're ready to accept that." She looked stunned. The guilt I'd felt for so long suddenly vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of clarity. I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the one who needed a change. She was the one holding on to an outdated idea of who I should be, and it was suffocating me. I didn't wait for her to say anything more. I turned around and walked away, heading to my bedroom to leave her in the living room, in stunned silence. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going back. When I heard her leave a few minutes later, I felt a strange relief, almost like a weight lifting off my chest. It wasn't easy to finally set that boundary, to say out loud that I was no longer willing to tolerate their toxicity, but in the end, it was the only way forward. Cutting ties with my parents wasn't just a single event that happened and was done with. It wasn't as simple as an argument followed by a clean break. It was the beginning of a process, one that continues to unfold even now, years later. At first, I didn't realize how deeply their absence would affect me, but over time, I began to understand that it wasn't about cutting them out entirely. It was about regaining control of my life, my mind, and most importantly, my sense of self-worth. When I walked away from my parents, there was a part of me that felt a mix of guilt and relief. For the first time in my life, I was no longer living under their constant scrutiny, but the idea of severing ties with them, even if it was necessary, weighed on me heavily. They were still my parents, after all, the foundation of my childhood, no matter how broken it was. And yet, despite all the years of disappointment, there was something inside me that longed for their approval. It wasn't an easy thing to accept. The first few months were a whirlwind of emotions. I moved into a small apartment just far enough away from them that I wouldn't run into them casually, but close enough to feel the ache of isolation. It was one of the strangest periods of my life, the quiet that followed the chaos. I started a new routine, not only for myself, but also for my mental health. I joined a gym, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the courage to before. Not because I thought I needed to lose weight for anyone else, but because I wanted to feel strong again, in control of my own body, not their idea of what it should look like. I got a dog, a rescue pup named Max, who became my constant companion. Max was my escape. He didn't care what I looked like or what anyone thought. He loved me simply for being me. And for the first time in my life, I started to enjoy being alone, finding peace in solitude rather than seeing it as a form of punishment. I was still processing everything that had happened, but the journey was beginning and it felt right. But then, after about 6 months, my mom called me. I wasn't expecting it, not after the last conversation we'd had. For a moment, I hesitated before answering. It felt strange, like I was stepping back into a past that I'd fought so hard to leave behind. When I picked up, her voice was soft, almost tentative. "Are you okay? I've been thinking about you a lot." I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't ready for the flood of emotions her voice would bring up, but I didn't hang up. I needed to hear what she had to say. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm just doing my best to live my life without the constant pressure." "I know I've been hard on you," she said, her voice cracking just a little. "I didn't know how much I was hurting you, but I see that now. I want you to know. I'm sorry. I never meant to make you feel worthless." There was a long silence after she spoke. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to cry, wanted to say, "It's too late, Mom," but I didn't. Instead, I let the silence hang, each of us dealing with our own version of the truth. The apology she was offering felt almost hollow, like it came from a place of guilt, not understanding. I let out a breath. "You didn't just hurt me, Mom. You made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like nothing I did could ever make you happy." I could feel my anger rise, but I kept it in check. This wasn't about blaming her. This was about recognizing that I needed to stop seeking validation from people who had made me feel small for so long. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought I was helping you. I thought I was being a good mom." But she wasn't. A good mother doesn't tear their child down for being who they are. A good mother doesn't make their child feel like they are never enough, no matter how hard they try. "You were trying to help," I said, "but you did it in a way that destroyed me, and I can't keep living in that environment anymore." There was another long silence, and when she spoke again, it was softer. "I just want you to be happy." "I am happy now, Mom." I replied, realizing in that moment how true those words were. For the first time, I am. The conversation didn't go anywhere after that. She tried to ask me to come home, to attend family events, but I knew deep down that was not what I needed. I needed space. I needed to be free of their constant judgment, to finally be allowed to exist without their expectations. I told her I couldn't go back. Not yet. Maybe never. And that was the hardest part. The realization that walking away from them wasn't just about cutting them out of my life. It was about choosing myself over their ideals. The months that followed were hard. There were moments when I questioned my decision, moments when I longed for the family I could have had if things had been different. But I reminded myself of the choice I had made, the choice that was rooted in love for myself, not out of spite or anger, but from a need to protect my own mental and emotional health. It wasn't just about leaving them behind. It was about moving forward. I started to build a new life for myself, piece by piece. I worked harder at my job, not because I had to, but because I was proving to myself that I was capable. I started reading books, something I had always loved but never had time for because I was always trying to meet someone else's standards. I found joy in the little things that I had once overlooked, like cooking a meal for myself or simply walking in the park. Then, after about a year, my dad called. I was taken aback. We hadn't spoken since the last time I'd seen him at a family gathering where I'd made the choice to step away. He didn't know how to approach me, but I could tell he wanted to bridge the gap. "I've been thinking about you a lot," he said, "and I'm sorry too. I should have been a better father." I didn't know what to say at first. I didn't know how to respond to his apology. It wasn't that I didn't want to forgive him. It's that, at this point, it didn't matter. The years of hurt had built a wall that couldn't be torn down so easily. I didn't need his approval anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval. "I've moved on, Dad," I said softly. "I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not coming back." He understood, and in a way, I think that was the most difficult part for both of us, letting go, but also the most freeing. I had made peace with the fact that I would never have the parents I imagined, but I had something far more valuable now: freedom. Freedom from the chains of self-doubt they had put on me. Freedom to live my life on my terms. I still think about them sometimes. I'll always love them, but I can't let their need to control me dictate who I am. I've built a life I can be proud of, even without them in it. And now I understand that I am enough, just as I am, and that in the end is all that matters.